Welcome to this live panel debate on tackling rising costs in hospitality. I'm Cara Houchen, editor of the Staff Canteen, and we've partnered with Rationale to discuss this topic in more detail with our panelists and hopefully give you all tips, advice, inspiration for your own businesses and teams. Before we get started, please do ask our panelists any questions using the comments. And if you enjoy this panel and want to know more, you can sign up for a free 10-minute webinar with Rationale today. The link is in the comments below. So let me introduce the panel today, and then we will get started. So to start us off, we have Rehan Uddin, Managing Director, Chef Patron of Asian Restaurant Owners Network. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, looking forward to this conversation today. It's certainly hitting a lot of the big topics out there.
Yeah, definitely right. And next up, we've got Ollie Williamson, head chef at 3 Michelin-starred The Fat Duck.
Hi, guys. Yeah, also
Hi, Ollie.
Pretty happy to be part of it and see if we can hammer out some interesting things in a topic, very common amongst every business at the minute.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up, Kris Hall, founder of the Burnt Chef Project.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hi,
Can you hear me
Kris.
okay?
Elliot Hill, executive chef of the Chester Grosvenor.
Has it come on?
There you are. I thought we lost you then.
I think it's a little bit
Good. And finally, Tom Bainbridge, chef and owner of the Tilbury and the White Hart. Hi, Tom.
Hi there. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you for joining us. So firstly, can you all give us a quick overview of your businesses that you work in or for, and how you are managing costs before we get into some main questions? So who would like to start? Ollie, I'm looking at you first, so you can go first, and then I'll work my way around.
Great. This year it's been a huge effort to engage and retain staff. Demanding higher salaries and less hours after the kind of COVID malarkey, let's say. VAT bills, energy increases have all left the old P&L meetings much more arduous than ever. I think they get longer each monthly time we meet. That's for sure. We're trying wherever we can to. It's a weird thing because you need to pay people more. But then they want to work less, so you need more people. So it's a bit with the salary thing, it's a bit of a kind of vicious circle. But then how do you deal with anywhere else that you could possibly cut costs? We're questioning suppliers with where we can kind of collaborate a bit more, and whether we can get communal deliveries, which I know is very difficult. But we're starting to have those questions with people and try wherever we can. Obviously. I've known a bit as Mr. Sustainable at the minute, so our kind of efforts in plastic reduction has actually helped us cut a lot of costs when it comes to gloves and kind of piping bags. That we're about a third down on the cost of like the high quality plastic. It's better for the environment and it's cheaper in many senses. So yeah, that's kind of like a brief overview, I suppose.
Okay. We'll obviously dig deeper into all of that as we go on. Rehan, what about yourself? Listening to obviously what Ollie said, what about yourself, and what would you kind of add to that?
Look, Ollie's absolutely spot on with what he's sort of itemized as the things that we're up against. From the Asian Restaurant Owners Network, I'm overlooking 3,000 restaurants, small, medium, large. We're seeing all kinds of problems that differ from size of business. But we're also seeing things that are the same, and it's those similarities that we're having to sort of mediate. Myself, as a restaurant owner, rebranded in March, looking at the costs of cooking Asian food in the first place that were already spiraling before the energy certainly took a massive hit. It's a difficult process that is going to take us out of our comfort zones, but it's also going to really rely on us to use new things that we've not really seen as options before. And when we're looking at teams later today, and we're looking at management, and we're looking at the elements of supply chain, there are a huge amount of issues that have to be looked at from a reverse engineered process. So we're starting from the end and building from the front. But I'm sure that's something we will definitely dive into in the conversation as we go on.
Yeah, definitely. Kris, what about yourself? What can you add?
So-
Because obviously you're coming at this from a different perspective.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so the Burnt Chef Project is it's a global not-for-profit organisation tackling mental health stigma within hospitality. But over the last 2 years, we've become laser focused and fully committed to working with businesses and business owners and management teams to create sustainable businesses by focusing on people-focused measures first. So we come at this very much from a data-driven approach in terms of what we can do to improve retention rates, to improve our recruitment opportunities, to reduce turnover of staff, that actually then significantly increase the positives on the P&L forecasting and P&L balance sheets. So that's sort of the background. But I mean, my background is working in supply chain as well. So, having worked for food wholesalers supplying fine dining ingredients for over 10 years, it could be quite an interesting conversation to hit from that side as well.
Yeah. Okay. Elliot, what about yourself?
Well, much the same as the other chaps. It's Chester Grosvenor, for example. It's a big old hotel. It was built in 1865, so we've got all sorts of issues with energy now. So one of our focuses as a whole hotel, rather than just the kitchen, was to reduce the energy usage from 5,000 to 4,000 kilowatt hours. Essentially, the aim is eventually 25%, and we've managed to hit 17% at the moment in reduction in the last sort of 4 weeks of energy usage. But going back to, it's at every angle in the industry at the moment, whether it's energy use, whether it's cost of supplies, whether it's cost of staffing, whether it's looking after your staff better, which it's something that the industry needed to do years ago and hasn't done anywhere near enough yet. It's at every angle now, and I fear for the next 6 months of sort of the smaller independent restaurants. I'm seeing every time I go on Twitter, you see somewhere closing or somewhere struggling, and you just sort of want to batten down the hatch for the next 6 months and see what we can all do.
Yeah. And Tom, again, a slightly different part of the sector. So what would you like to add to that, and kind of what you do?
Well, we are that smaller independent restaurant. So I own a couple of country pubs, sort of higher end country pubs with my brother, and just looking at and tackling all of the issues that have already been raised, really. I mean, staffing, we've always been very fortunate. Our retention's been very good. But knock-ons from change of lifestyle from COVID, I think that's affected everyone so much. The amount that people want to work, the amount of people want to see their families. That has been a huge challenge that's still going on now and sort of getting more challenging for us. Energy, being in 15th century pubs, is obviously a huge one, not just on how we use and how we cook in the kitchens, but I recently looked at the insulation in our cellar in our first pub and realised we're obviously the insulation between the floorboards is terrible. So we're actually down below pumping in energy and using energy to cool the cellar, which is then just floating up through the floorboards to cool down the heating of the room upstairs. So it's just fighting each other, burning more energy. And I think we look at everything differently now. It's from the business, from top to bottom, from food costs to the way we do everything in the kitchen, to menu styles, dish style, how we deliver now, the hours we operate. It's all changing, and I think we all learned to evolve and adapt as we needed to with COVID. And to be honest, that's kind of our mindset's never really changed off of that period. And we were just looking ahead. We sort of saw these times coming, and we've been thinking about it for a long time and trying to adapt where we can. Yeah.
I mean, as you've all said, there are many, many aspects to this topic. It's quite vast. I'm going to start with you, Rehan, because obviously this is in partnership with Rationale, and you are one of their expert chefs. So I would just like to ask you, what are they doing to be innovative around the energy crisis?
So, I mean, for myself, obviously working with Rationale alongside them, had to implement certain strategies for the business, and that being low labor. So from what we know from chefs, experience demands high salaries, and it's going to cost you a lot of money to kit out a kitchen with a full team. So I took the challenge to set up our kitchen on a 2-man team to be able to deliver the high expectations of the customer, but also deliver that consistency as well. So how are we going to do this? So we looked at the equipment that we had with the iVario Pro and the iCombi Pro, and in creating a menu that was going to be suitable for the situation that we find ourselves in currently. So like I said earlier, reverse engineering the process, looking at what times would be available to us, and not sort of having processes that involved double cooking methods. In terms of the prep being quick, efficient, and straight to the point, not having those long manual labor hours, because there's 2 of us, we don't need to have the excess work piled on top of us. We actually need to make sure it's easier for us to be able to complete a prep and then also complete the service. If we're able to do that in record times, we use less energy because our prep is positioned and built in a way that we're using every shelf at the same time, because we're able to maneuver the sort of temperatures that we need to build the maximum prep that we can deliver for maximum occupancy, that we can deliver with maximum efficiency. So we're not having the units on all day through the prep. There is a certain time period that we need them on for prep, and there's a certain time period we need on for service. So it's being able to utilize that, the support that we get from the corporate chefs from there, where we're actually working with each other. So the Asian experience of cooking matched with the European experience of cooking, and actually merging the two to be able to eliminate a energy inefficient tandoori oven that's just going to be blasting out gas all day, all night, because it needs to stay at a certain temperature consistently. So it's actually using the methodologies of technology to automate, but also be able to position ourselves to know that prep is fixed. This is a fixed time for what we're going to be able to deliver. And our service time, with our hours being shortened, is obviously a lot shorter. But the energy efficiency of the products, the actual being able to have them self-clean is phenomenal. And then the drop and drag technology that allows anyone to come in and learn about how they can implement these into their restaurants and take this existing software, which we've pre-programmed for Asian restaurants. It certainly makes life a lot easier. It certainly makes that recruitment process somewhat easier, and the training process relatively easy as well, in terms of being able to drop and drag and produce particular items. So I think when we're looking at technology playing the part, the iCombi Pro and the iVario Pro certainly have allowed us to save time. And if we've got long cooks that we need to do overnight, we can do that on the overnight cook setting as well, which then it will drop into its holding mode, which is on a low energy mode as well. So certainly some benefits there, yeah.
Yeah, and other panelists who are listening, what are your thoughts on what Rehan's just said there?
I mean, at the Grosvenor, we've got 7 rationales. One of them's down at the moment. We're waiting for parts, but I found myself turning them off so many times. People, used to back in the day, leaving them on at 180, 170 all day, and I just walk around turning them all off. If you don't need them, that's it. Simple as. And obviously we're trying to save money on electricity, and like I said, with your prep time, it's gone the days where you're walking down the kitchen to see all of them turned on, all full going. If you can multitask in one, do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's one of the things, though, isn't it? It's that when we're looking at these elements, there has to be a methodology behind it, because I think it might have been Elliot who said it earlier, was talking about actually having that within the business of having multiple staff and multiple things going on at the same time. You're going to have that element where you actually compartmentalize the time that you have. I think before, I mean, if we look maybe even pre-COVID times, everything's on, everything's running. You're not really accounting for that energy. I think now we know exactly how much we pay for a kilowatt. I don't think 4 or 5 years ago we batted an eyelid to it, and I think that's the difference, where the approach has changed completely
for the better.
Absolutely.
Okay. Anyone else? Anything to add on that before we move on? No. Okay. I also want to talk about menu engineering. So items on the menu could help with saving costs. So seasonal, local. I've spoken to several chefs about how they're moved to tasting menus as well to help with costing. So Ollie, I'm going to come to you. What are your thoughts on that? On how that helps to reduce costs where your menu is concerned?
Well, I mean, it's a bit of a trickier kind of story for us because we used to do this thing called the journey menu, which was 17, 18 courses, and then now which we prefer to do the kind of 8, 9 courses just for the length of the experience. It's too long. So it does kind of go hand in hand for, working hours. It means that, we need 10 chefs to do one service minimum. We can't really deliver our, the style of food, the gastronomy we do here with less. I forgot what I was going to say. So actually they come hand in hand. The fact that people don't want to sit there for 4 or 5 hours anymore. So now it's a 2.5, 3 hour experience that has reduced the menu, which has, in turn reduced staffing costs. But that's more of a kind of luck thing than actually something that we engineered ourselves. We definitely look at those things that when we came back from Australia, the whole kitchen got kitted out with induction, so we don't use gas. We use a huge pressure cooker, and we cook all our stocks in there, and that reduces energy again because you can make a stock in 2 hours instead of for however long, and they get made pre-batched and frozen. So a lot of it's looked at, but this topic is less. We can't really adjust what we are delivering so much. We're still it's still a concept restaurant with emotions, and there's a story behind most of the journey of the menu. So it's much more difficult for us to say, okay, we're going to do a la carte, or we're going to take 3 courses out, or whatever. Something we do think about, but the experience and what we're trying to deliver in terms of the journey of the menu is more important than that, even though it's in the back of our mind on this one.
Yeah. Okay. Tom, what about yourself? Have you looked at the menu and the costings and where you can save there?
Yeah, it's probably being a chef now is probably one of the biggest challenges that there is. I think it's wising up to what we use, how we use it. The days of we never have, but the days of buying a chicken breast must be long gone for everyone. It's whole animal. How can we use it? How can we break that bird down and use it in 5 different ways to maximise profit out of one product? For us now, is even steaks. We buy in whole rumps, break them all down into single muscles, brine them. So we just changed. We used to buy all mid-cut sirloins, 10 ounce. That now the price of that would just make you cringe. And what we would have to pass on to the guest it would just be fried. And so we're very much work with being creative with what we've got, then how we use trim from any products, not just for the days of having staff food that had all that trim in and stuff. Is actually now how do you take that a step further, and how can we get that into a bar snack, or we've taken a little single muscle off a whole rump and make an a la carte starter out of it. And I guess we've always worked like that, but it's just evolved more and more naturally, just seeing the cost of everything go up. Locally wise, where possible we use local, but I would say more from a foraging sense. That's obviously this time of year. It's been just past now. We've been very bountiful on berries, so we've just stocked up, made tons and tons of hedgerow sorbets to get in the freezer for the rest of the winter, and got local orchards in the park, so we can make our applesauce on Sundays from that. So it's really just sort of being very aware of what's around you, what's available, and the products you do get. It's looking long and hard at them, and how can you maximise them and get the most out of them.
Yeah, Elliot, what about yourself? Because obviously you said that the Chester Grosvenor is a beast. So
carrying on what Ollie and Tom said. Firstly, we're lucky because and unlucky. So we got Arca, which obviously our fine dining concept, and we'll look across both kitchens and we're lucky. And use the whole animal. If we're not using the legs in one restaurant, we can use it elsewhere, etc. And upstairs. But I think as a wider point, and I've had a conversation with certainly my directors and my bosses about certainly how kitchens are used. Obviously, people use GP an awful lot, and for me, it's sort of like I think that needs a better discussion because GP doesn't necessarily mean your profit. So if you look at, for example, in our brasserie restaurant, which is obviously it's a 2 rows French style. Brasserie, that can do some big numbers. And if you look at, for example, a steak, that takes a lot less man hours to prepare than it will do many of our a la carte dishes. So you look at that, you're never going to make your GP or your targeted margin on your steaks, etc. Like Tom said. So we look at that and thinking, well, actually, the bottom line is if we say we're happy with that amount of profit to come compared to an a la carte dish, but there's actually less manual labour going into that, then we're happy to sell that at a certain cost. And never mind your GP, we need to look at the bottom line and how that affects, rather than just concentrating on GP only. But like I said, we're very fortunate in the case of naturally there's on whole beasts and on the expensive cuts and stuff, we don't have any wastage. We can use it upstairs in our event kitchen, or if the event kitchen has leftovers, we use it downstairs in the brasserie, or if anything that's left over for whole beast in Arca, we use it elsewhere as well. So we are very fortunate.
Yeah, I mean, all of you alongside that have all touched on staff as well. So I would like to bring Kris into the conversation. I mean, Ollie, you said you need 10 chefs to do your service. That's what you need, and obviously retaining those is very important, because you don't want to be paying out for recruiting more or if they're not there. So Kris, give us some pointers on that topic and ways of keeping your team happy and healthy.
Yeah, well, it's. I mean, Christ, you're looking for a magic pill, right? As with this whole subject matter, there's no one size fits all. It was interesting listening to Ollie and Tom and talk about things like using whole beasts and addressing wastage, which in some restaurants is up to 35% and looking at wastage costs. But we don't really spend much time properly targeting our retention and our turnover rates. I mean, to give you an idea, one business that we spoke to recently have a turnover rate, they're targeted for 125%, which when you start to question it, similarly like Elliot said about GP, when you're questioning, you're trying to lose 100% of your team plus an additional 25% every single year. That's your target. Like, we need to start questioning why these targets have been set and what we need to do about it. When it comes to retaining teams, there's so many options, and often enough we have sort of fallen into this trap of let's pay people as much money as possible because that will convince them to stay and that will give them what they want in order to be able to keep a sustainable lifestyle. And we saw this a couple of years ago, long before COVID, with an exodus of people starting to take on agency work because there was a better per hour salary or wage. But what then that exacerbates is people jumping ship. So they'll go, I've just been paid 60 grand for a head chef role at this other place. Can you give me 65 or 70 and I'll come and work for you? And then that might last 3 months or 6 months. It's not sorting the recruitment crisis, it's just elongating it ever so slightly, and it's now pushed operators to a point where actually they're paying more out in labour than they've ever have done, and yet people still aren't staying within organisations. So I feel like we're missing something, and then some certain surveys that we've done is showing that people, yes, they value more money, but it keeps coming out top every single time, and that's work-life balance.
Yeah.
That's a sense of being valued and a sense of purpose. And I think we've missed a trick with this. I think that actually, if we just listen to what our teams are saying, then we're able to retain them for longer by giving them a fully inclusive workplace that values them, gives them a say, gives them some degree of autonomy, allows them to show that we value them as a human being, and that in itself will help promote it. And to give you a brief story, I worked for a food wholesaler for 4 years, supplying some incredible restaurants down in the southwest. My salary was low compared to what I was on in Bournemouth, and yet I stayed at that company for 4 years. And the reason being is because there was that sense of value. There was a sense of purpose. There was that I knew what my role was. I knew what my job role was. I knew I had a say. And it wasn't about money. It was about something else. Now, I appreciate, for a long time, this industry has been underpaid for the amount of hours that you do. If you're doing a 60 to 80 hour week, then yes, you deserve to be paid your time and what you're worth. But we looked at this perhaps as like let's throw money at this because this won't change. This metric won't change, as opposed to let's see what we can do to keep people on a similar sort of salary, but reduce the amount of hours they do and to give that equilibrium.
What's everybody's thoughts on what Kris has just had to say? You all have teams, you're all, in that same situation.
I can't agree more with what Kris has said. Throwing money at this, yeah, great, but you need to cure the disease and not the symptoms. Throwing money at it is just trying to cure the symptoms, but the disease really is a work-life balance and a balance, a good scale of pay, and definitely valuing your team as well. That's huge. But as an industry, to be honest, not even just beyond the industry. It's the cultural people who go out to eat as well need to understand the true cost of going to eat somewhere where it's actually professionals cooking, proper skilled chefs cooking as well, because the cost of the skills of those chefs are going to go up and up, and not just going to these chains where you're opening packets and God knows where they come from. So I can wholeheartedly love to hear what Kris was saying.
It's tricky though, right? Like it's very difficult to put a metric on culture. You don't know where that dipstick lies, and because in fact, in essence, I think if we're honest with ourselves from a managerial, from a business perspective, we've been too afraid to ask. We've been afraid to go out to people and say, and this is this is blanket cover, and this isn't the case. There are many places, even large chains now, who are doing great things in terms of finding out where their employees are. But I think we just need to be prepared to ask that question and be like, what do you want? Like, how do we do this and manage those expectations accordingly so that we can get to this area where we've got a mutual understanding from employee to employer, and it also works for our P&L long term as well.
Yeah, I think that's a game changer. It has been for us as well. That giving your staff the voice, the ability for them to communicate with you. We do it like quarterly at the minute, but it's just whenever we kind of feel the need, where we just put a suggestions box in the staff food in the canteen, and then anybody anonymously can just put in there what they like to see, and then we can translate that into experiences or whatever. A lot of them were demo days, so on the back of that, we've had the sous chefs prepping down a suckling pig as a demonstration. We've had caviar tastings. We've been to Paul Rhodes Bakery, we make our bread, been on forager trips. So just getting the guys involved and listening to what they want. A lot of it was staff food. So we improved a lot of our staff food. A lot of the guys start in the morning, don't have breakfast. So we said, okay, we're going to make a smoothie every morning, and it has to be healthy. It has to be nutritious and thought about. And that, so every day at our dietary meetings in the morning, there's a healthy smoothie to start your day. And that was off the back of that. A lot of people wanted to get in shape. So the company subsidized a gym membership down the corner. So but all of this came from our suggestion boxes. And you're right. Like the thing of like having a voice, not just being a number, and, being part of something and seeing change, and the managers responding to what you want, not only just throwing money at them. Of course, that's a big part of it, and we do top up pay. So if you work over your contracted hours, then you do get more pay. But that's another thing. But I agree, you don't just we're not helping. We're fueling the fire if we just keep saying up and up and up. Give more money. It needs to be more than that, and I totally agree with that.
Rehan, you were about to say something as well.
Yeah, I think there's an element of Generation X, Y, and Z. You've got the old guard in there as well. It's quite a mixed dialect that's going on in terms of what's expected, in terms of the levels that they would commit, and what each section of that generational gap seems as acceptable. And it's quite different. So you have your business ethos, you have the elements that are within there. When we look at the lower age sector, they're all thinking in touchscreen. They're all thinking in quick. They're ideas and certainly their surroundings within their day-to-day life is very quick, fast, on to the next thing. Whereas actually processes within businesses can be slightly different to that. And actually, how far do we need to break it down to actually find where that lies? And actually, where do the experienced old guard, if you will, for lack of a better phrase, actually fit into that? And is there compromise built into businesses that have to be made to have that those inclusive elements to be able to build a package that fits everyone's needs? I'm not saying it's easy. It's very, very difficult at this point in time. Like Kris was saying earlier, it's something that actually, when we're looking at staff retention, and when Kris was saying there's obviously 120%, 140% was leaving, it's a massive thing. It's always been relevant in hospitality. But I think now, where people are looking to secure jobs, secure income, have things in a fixed manner so they know what they're getting because they've got huge cost implications at home. How does a business secure that, where maybe what we're seeing is up and down trajectory of sales or the frequency of sales in businesses across the board? That sort of solid commitment from a business is something that I think people are very much reliant on. But also looking into the future is, if people know that the businesses have these mechanisms in place, it's certainly a prospect that they would look to, like you said, you were working a long hours job for probably less pay that you could get somewhere else. Certainly they're looking at the pay opportunities, but if the environment isn't right, actually the pay is actually secondary. If the environment is absolutely where they want to work and it's buzzing and people are moving around and you have a great time at work, it's not work then. It's actually more of a lifestyle. And I think that's where we need to look at what we're demanding on the work side of things, but also the environment that we've created within that structure. Is it something that they're looking forward to come to day in, day out? Is it something they're dreading to come through day in, day out? And actually, how do we find that out? And I think the suggestion box that Ollie mentioned is definitely something that would work well in that environment. But yeah, there isn't a total answer to this. Every single person's an individual. They're very different. And to create something that fits everyone completely is pretty impossible. But to create an environment where there are sort of dopamine hits through the shift that give you that sort of buzz as well, I certainly think that would be a great way to look at it, to sort of implement those elements in the business.
But I think the two elements. So the first element of, what are we doing about our energy problem at this moment in time, and how we're reducing our energy, and then creating environments that are conducive to good well-being and people want to stay in. The two are exactly the same conversation from a physical stress point of view. So, we talk about induction hobs. Induction hobs are a fair old whack to invest in, but they cut down your cleaning time, they cut down your energy consumption, they significantly cut down the heat that's involved in the kitchen, thus not only reducing your energy consumption, but also creating a happier environment. Same with fan systems now. You can get really intelligent fan systems that accurately and they change the fan speed, they change the noise depending on what heat's going to them, what time of day it is, whether it's in service, out of service. And again, that cuts down energy, but it also cuts down the impact on someone's stress responses. And just to put all of this into tangible figures that people will actually understand, we've just done a psychological study on a restaurant group in London. And out of 141 people that responded to this survey, just over 46% of those were looking to leave their role. A large percentage of those, a significant percentage of those, were experiencing what's called presenteeism. So they were in the workplace, they weren't fully engaged, they didn't really, they weren't able to fire on all cylinders because physically and mentally they were quite unwell. But that was costing that organization, this is across 141 people, that was conservatively costing them £78,000 per month, just in poor productivity, in mistakes, in customer service interactions. When you add the turnover intention into that as well, which was just under 50% of people, that was an additional £1 million a year. Now, I don't know about you guys, but on a 7-site organisation, losing close to £2 million a year just on cost of people, retaining and people being well, that could have a massive and profound impact on our profit margins at the end of the year, right?
Tom, listening to all of this and coming at this as a small independent, how easy is it for you to implement some of the things that have been said today? If you don't, I mean, you may already, but things that maybe you don't, how difficult is it as a smaller restaurant?
I think you can. Support lines can be there, whatever size business you are. I mean, we're very hands-on personal owners. I'm relatively new to the industry. I came to it from more of a business and property background, and when I first came in, it shocked me actually how a kitchen could operate and what people were like and how they treated each other. And I was very much from day one, I'm looking at this as a business and a workplace. These things don't happen, and culture in here needs to change straight away because it's just not right. And the stories I've heard from experienced chefs have always blown me away. And those changes that have happened and we've seen happen more over the last few years is well overdue, like was touched on earlier. And I think is a big part of seeing longevity, because it's another thing in chefs is longevity. I mean, we employed a guy again through agency work because he had turned to work in hourly, turned 50, and in his mind he was done. So I've done this for so long, I'm so beaten, I've worked so many hours, I'm done. 50 years old. I mean, I'm 40 next year, and I feel it more now, but it's for longevity, it's not. We can't work the way we've always worked. I mean, it's slightly different as an owner. You'll do it and get it done, and we'll do it so others don't have to. But I think that day-to-day freshness and better balance towards life and how hard work can be, because whatever we change, if you're in work for a 10-hour day, it's still a tough day. Especially now that we're looking to maximise and be smarter about how we do things. It's very much in, heads down, crack on, get it done. If you're here, you're working hard. You'll have a break, you get out for a couple of hours, you come back, it's focused, just get back on with it. So it's still tiring. And I think really looking at these changes, it's attacking that longevity as well, in how long people can and want to work for. Feeling beaten is not a good thing.
No, definitely not. We've talked about lots of obviously different areas of rising costs, but I just want to know, all of you, have you had to pass any of these rising costs on to your customers? If you haven't, is it something that you are going to have to do? Ollie?
It's as you can see it across the industry, more and more people. I mean, Longclude recently put their prices up and got a lot of attention from it. I spoke to Jeremy at Ikoyi the other day, and he's reopening, and he's going to have to, factor in a big cost increase, but not from the new site, just to look after the guys and get the product that he wants and to deliver. And it's the same thing for us. I mean, we've got a Christmas menu, which is kind of a bit of like a test in the water to see what kind of an increase for us would look like, because it's already we're aware it's a high price point. Cost of living's going up, and whether we outprice ourselves is something we talk about a lot at the minute. But also there's a breaking point where if you're not making money as well as a business, then there needs to be a happy medium. But we're tentative with that, but we're testing it out with Christmas, and then into the new year we'll kind of understand it a bit better. But it's a bit of the unknown as well, because it's like how much will people pay for the experience, because how much do people actually care that are coming to dine, whether the staff are enjoying themselves. I think they do, and you want to think that, but sometimes when you say, okay, it's 350 quid to come in here on a Friday night, people wince, and you go, well, we're looking after our staff, and that's the cost of that, and the product is exceptional, and that's the cost of that. But it's an interesting topic, and one we discuss a lot at the minute, because we don't want to outprice ourselves, but we're aware that there's a bit of balance to be adhered to.
Just on that front, there's a company that we work with, the Ethicurian in Bristol, a fantastic fantastic business. Long time ago, probably a year and a half ago now, they actually increased their prices quite significantly. So what they did is they went to their accountants and said to the accountants, what do we need to charge for our menu in order to be able to give our teams living wage, to to give them trunk as part of their standard salary, so they're able to get mortgages, etc. And the accountants came back with a figure, and they went, if that's what we need to do to run the business, then let's go for it, and let's see what happens. And there's a psychological element here, which is we're always afraid to put our prices up because we think as soon as we put our prices up, customers are gonna boycott us, and then they're going to leave. Which, you are going to get some people do that. But in the Epicurians case, what they've actually seen is that people still continue to come, and they still continue to spend that money. And it's a set cost, it's a set menu, as a tasting menu now. But the impact they haven't seen was as profound as they thought. It's comfortable for them. Now there's an equilibrium, there's a balance. But if you are paying for good service and a good experience, then customers who are going to spend that money hopefully won't quibble over a 5, 10, 15, 20% increase.
Elliot, what about you?
Well,
is it something you've
I
had
was
to do
speaking
yet?
Yes and no. We've decreased in certain areas and increased in others. So, obviously we've got 2 restaurants, and then we've got afternoon tea on top of that. The afternoon tea's increased. Arco's a new restaurant that's been open 7 months now. We've decreased the price slightly, but it's we want that to sort of look after itself in terms of it's not necessarily there to make money in Arco. We know it's not going to make money. I'm probably going to get told upon my boss for saying that, but we don't make money in that restaurant. It's a service. We want that restaurant to be a sort of a special restaurant in the Chester Grosvenor, as it should be. And then we've got the Brasserie as well, which is absolutely, it turns over a lot of casual dining. We've seen an increase in that, which is interesting. Because we have the 2 rows outside, and we have the casual dining side. So it's one of them where I was speaking to I'm going to keep him nameless, a hotel inspector not so long ago, and he was saying at the very high end, your high end market, keep it high end, keep the prices up. That will look after itself. For people who want to go out and experience, at Ollie's level, at 3 Michelin star level, and at the very highest level, will continue going out. It's the mid market that's going to suffer more than anyone else. The low end market, people are still going to be calling out for. The high end market, people are still going to go out for special occasions, but it's the middle market that's going to really suffer, they think, over the next sort of 6 months.
Okay. Any thoughts on what Elliot's just said?
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you look at the lower, middle, and upper market, specifically from restaurants' point of view. It's definitely changing. Even the lower sector is changing in the fact that people aren't eating out as frequently. So the supermarkets are certainly picking up a lot of the maybe takeout sales and dining at home in terms of that respect. So that market is definitely shrinking as well. The middle, lower middle, upper middle, that's all changed. So everybody's had to re-bracket themselves over the last few months in terms of what their outgoings are, how much their mortgage has gone up by, and then attribute that to what they will pay out on their sort of special occasions and things where they'll be dining out, and that budget. And because that's changed, the sort of frequency that we're looking at as restaurants in terms of what will come through is via the bookings. So you'll know what's coming your way. But in terms of cancellations, things happening where the group party is actually not 9 anymore, it's been reduced because maybe so-and-so are looking at it and thinking maybe not this week. These are the parameters that we're having to work in. And certainly when we're talking about menu price, it's especially in that middle market range where you're looking in some instances just to break even. But you're looking at what can people actively afford, how long can they afford this for, and how many times a month are they going to be able to visit you. If you look at the data, like Kris was saying earlier, and how important that is, I'm certainly seeing changes in behaviors, ordering, how people order, what they order. And certainly when we're looking at curries, we're looking at everything that's being imported, from spices to rice, and those increases that we see on a day-to-day basis. It's very difficult to make a curry profitable under 15 quid. And when we look at the supermarkets and how they're proceeding in their elements, along with big brand names that are attaching themselves together to collaborate, the margins that they're making in the sales of that is next to nothing, but they're selling it in the millions. So a small independent restaurant to be able to compete in that area now, very, very difficult. So you're having to think outside the box on what you prepare and what you make. And certainly colder items that in Indian restaurants, you've never heard of cold items being served. I'm sure many of you may not have had those things, but certainly with the 0% VAT and things of that nature attributed to them, these items need to be present. They need to be good. They need to be up there so that you can make those margins. But quite frankly, when we look at menus right now, I think it's the most important asset of the business to get right. If we don't get that aspect right, I think we're in big trouble, because businesses on any scale will see that those margins now are dwindling away, and money being put back into the businesses from restaurants I speak to across the country. Very difficult to maintain that unless the menu's spot on. But I don't know about you guys. I reckon that margin between good value for money and profitability is getting smaller and smaller, and it's trying to work out where that lies.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Tom, any more thoughts?
I mean, it's actually just going back on, I think it was it you, Elliot, that was saying about the margins and everyone being a bit too GP obsessed. So looking at that, I've always viewed it, again, as a business point of view of cash margin sometimes. But sometimes looking at it now, that is an easier way to look at it, because, we are paying X, it's costing Y, we sell it for Z, but we are still making X amount per person that walks through this door. Sometimes it's easier to quantify how many people need to walk through the door to make it work. I would say we are full on in that middle bracket. We're sort of 2 rosette venues in pubs, and the decline we've seen over numbers is crazy. It's so across the business compared to 2019, we're 20 to 25% down on turnover, and that is, we are now, the only day for us that's truly full still is Sundays. Every other day of the week is suffered. We're known locally well for our roast, so that fills us up, but you've really seen a decline, and it is those good regulars that you would have seen once, twice a week. You're now once a month maybe.
Has the spend per head changed as well?
Do you know what, spend per head, I would say, we have increased costs slightly in places. I'd say the ones that do go out, the spend per head is potentially even better than it was before.
Okay.
Because they're out and they're celebrating being out, and they're going to get what they get. So top end wine sales are still happen, they're still good. I'd say average spend per heads probably have increased slightly, but footfall down.
And just out of curiosity, Tom, how many days a week are you open at the moment?
We've changed to 5. So we were, our first venue was always 6 days a week. Second venue is actually a coaching inn, so it's a small hotel as well. And that we've switched that to 5 days as well. So the hotel's open 7, but kitchen-wise, having them open even 6 days was just getting too tough to staff, especially with the hotel. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, 7 days a week. It just couldn't do it. And us personally as owners, we were working 6-7 days a week. We got young kids, we got families, and there's that balance for us of, you're pushing on. We always put our business first, and our staff, they are like family. We'll get on like a family. That's why our retention's so good. So you do put them first, but then there's that balance for you. So actually, I ain't seen my kids. Don't see them enough now. And a lot of the points that you've talked about, Kris, of struggling and even getting motivation to push on, I can feel that as an owner, because I beat myself because I'm there. I'm in there first, I'm out last, because I want to make everyone's life better. But I'm very conscious that I am, like I said, getting older, get more tired. I can't keep going the way I'm going. But it's we've seen the way the world's going and what's happening. It's just a bit of a survival mode.
It's interesting. I wonder whether or not it's worth all of us taking a look at not just the days that were profitable, but the services that were profitable as well. And like averaging them out over a period of time, because it may be that perhaps there are, breakfast or lunches or certain dinners at certain time of the week that are just complete lost leaders time and time again.
Yeah, we've run that exercise. So where we ran that on going down to 5 days from 6 at the first pub. Breakfast, we used to be open for the hotel guests and public 7 days a week. But for that, you're staffing up front of house. You've got someone ready to make tons of coffees, then people don't tell you. You've got someone else on the floor. You've definitely got someone full-time in the kitchen. You look at it, you'd even do a very busy breakfast. You'd look at the cash say it's just not worth doing. So we are hotel guests only for breakfast, but we're 13 rooms if it's 5-6 rooms. If me or my brother are working, we'll cook it and serve it. So it's just one of us in the building, and whereas it used to be 2 or 3. And it's but I think that again that's going to shift it again, because everyone's. I even go out in parts of London now, and everything's shut on Monday and Tuesday, and which is a right wound for us because it's the only time we can go out. But you see these places, you think if they need to shut on a Monday and a Tuesday, we're talking big names, good places, because of staff profitability being open. That really shows where the industry's at and how hard it's getting.
Yeah, we're doing similar. Like I said, Arkle, it's a new restaurant, only 7 months old, but from January onwards, we're looking at closing Tuesdays and then hopefully eventually, because we need the afternoon tea to move, to do a Saturday lunch and maybe a Friday lunch. We found open 5 nights that there's always one night that lets you down.
Yeah,
it's a 40 cover restaurant. We this Saturday just gone, we did 34 covers, and we did very good covers all week, apart from one day where we did 12. So we're going to hopefully try and squeeze it all into the 4 nights and then open for Saturday lunchtime and at slight reduced price. And instead of doing 8 courses, we'll look at 5 courses, for example. And we also introduced a 5-course menu Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night. And some weeks it's brilliant, some weeks it doesn't sell, but it's just to try and make sure that the business is turning over and to make sure that the chefs in that area are turning over the product and it succeed, and that we've seen work really, really well. The brasserie, however, on our other restaurant, it's 7 days a week, breakfast, lunch and dinner. You're doing 140 guests, all plated breakfasts. Then you've got all the light bites as well, all the room services. So that's going to be a very difficult sort of restaurant to take over to that sort of direction. We can't shut any days for that. So staffing wise for that, it's been very, very difficult.
Lots of really good points there. And the final thing that I just wanted to quickly ask you about is energy bills and billing and how you're approaching those. Anything that you've changed? Any tips for people? Kind of like best practice for those. I'm sure you've all seen, and I think we've mentioned a significant increase in that area. Final kind of thoughts on that horrible looming prospect.
We've sorry to carry on. We've changed all our light bulbs, so and we're doing PIR, so passive infrared lighting in the back of house area, and air conditioning. We put eco mode, and in the hotel they used to leave the TVs on with the introduction to the Chester Grosvenor Hotel. Now that's just turned on as they enter the room instead. So all sorts of little things like that, and it's all added up. So we've seen a reduction in 17% over the last 4 weeks, which is it's worth about £12,000 to us. That is a month, I should say.
Right, amazing. Just small things that you probably would never have even thought about.
You feel like an idiot for not doing it sooner, to be honest with you. I feel really bad about it now. It's like, oh god.
But they are the simplest. Just it is switching to like LED light bulbs and stuff. They're long life. They use a lot less energy. Motion sensors could be good, which would be similar to the infrareds that you put in. So, like I say, it's even toilets will be the same. Again, our buildings are old. The wiring in an ideal world would rip it out and start again. I've got 7 different fuse boxes in one pub, but the lights are just always on. And yes, we're now going motion sensors in cloakrooms and stuff like that, just so that they are timed, they're on and off as and when they're not needed. Looking at the bills that are about to hit, there's not going to be masses we can do about it. I think it still stays stronger and it's negotiating, isn't it? It's still using an agent, a good agent that you trust. Tight where it feels comfortable is tie in for as long as possible. We're very fortunate. We tied in a year ago for 3 years, so we got very lucky on electricity. But gas is coming up now, so it's it's do all the little things. And to be honest, like we were saying earlier about switching to induction, it's maybe even forecasting into your long-term business plans of investment back into. We can't all say we'll do that this year, but that could be part of the 2, 3, 5-year plan of profit being invested back into the company to make it more energy efficient on inductions, lighting, heat source pumps are good. Obviously, you said about the aircon. Aircon's actually much more efficient to heat than central heating is. So after the summer we've just had, I'm sure a lot of people are looking at air conditioning, even in pubs and other restaurants, but they're actually a much cheaper way of heating, a more efficient way of heating than using built-in central heating is.
Rehan, I think we started this when you were talking about more efficient technology. So maybe just to come back to you, is there any other points, any other tips for this particular part of the topic?
Yeah, I think it's the length of time that dishes take to make. And it's actually how much time and energy is used to create that dish in the first place, which I think a lot of restaurants don't take into account because it's part of a working day. I think people are looking at it more and more now. So for me specifically, we've got rid of the tandoori oven years ago. We're getting rid of the stove, so the cooker's going to be going. We're going to replace it completely with the iVario, which we have anyway. The idea is actually if we can build things consistently and be able to put dishes together quicker and more efficiently, which we're able to thanks to the Rationale technology, then why wouldn't we make that transition? Is it a big step? Yes, it is. We're in a big crisis, so big steps are going to need to be taken to make these things work. But when we're looking at the processes of what it takes to stand in front of the stove, to build, to create, and gas is on, we have a sort of a gas hob Indian style cooker. And it has a range of motions, low, medium, and high. So you're working out what is it you're actually using in those times. Whereas the efficient knowledge of knowing that if we're on this setting, if we're producing this much energy, we know exactly how much we're going to use. It's very hard to quantify on gas when you're trying to work out how much is actually coming through those pipes at any given stage. So having those conservative positions of equipment, knowing what the processes will be, for the dishes that you're making, and what are those cooking times, what we're cooking, if it's going to take a long period of time, can we get these things done quicker? Can we manipulate settings to give us those finishes that we want? We most certainly can. And actually, what is this going to be? I think Tom said it earlier. As chefs, we're tired. We've got so much going on, and as owner chefs, we're certainly up against it. So how can we pass these elements on to staff without overworking them as well? I think touchscreen technology for me has certainly worked in that respect, and being able to have it done the same every time. So if someone is of a less experience, they can certainly get it right because it's a process. The machine tells you what to do. And I think this is where automation is going to come in and really aid businesses in their energy, because you'll have a fixed amount of time that it's on. You'll have a fixed amount of prep that is ready, positioned in the same manner, and it's going to make training easier, and also overseeing the process easier. So when we're looking at energy and making those savings, I think equipment is definitely something that's going to need to be looked at overall in kitchens going forward.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, hopefully everyone watching has taken something from today. Possibly my panelists as well may have heard some things that they can implement in their own restaurants. Thank you once again to all of you for joining me. For anyone watching, if you've enjoyed this panel and you want to know more, you can sign up for a free 10-minute webinar with Rationale today. The link is in the comments below. But that is the end of today's panel, and thank you all very much.